The 25th Hour Radio Show. Thanks for tuning in today to the 25th Hour Radio Show. I am your host, Rob Fairless, and today my guest is 11-time World Kickboxing Champion, action movie star, and member of the International Sports Hall of Fame, Don the Dragon Wilson. Don, thanks for being a guest on my show today.
Oh, thank you, Rob, for having me.
You know, Don, just like I do in all my other shows, I want to go back a little bit and get an understanding of what drove you to pursue martial arts in the first place. What was the influence there?
Actually, it was my brother. My brother was a black belt before I even started taking the martial arts. But I was always, from a young age, involved in sports. I grew up I'm half Japanese and half American, but I look Japanese, very Japanese. I grew up in Florida in the 50s and 60s, and there I was probably the only Japanese person in Central Florida, and I didn't really fit in with the other kids. You know, they started while I was in high school. They started the integration where they took black schools and closed them, and for the first time in history, they mixed black students with white. So you'd have blacks and whites, and then me. And to be accepted, I found out if you stick a 30-foot jump shot, they don't care if you're a green Martian. They love you. So to be accepted, I actually became my high school most valuable player in basketball and football. I excelled at sports at a young age. Then my brother was the one, though, that took that energy and that background and shifted it to martial arts. Now,
did you just train under your brother, or did you train under someone else?
Well, the very first style I took was in the Coast Guard Academy, and that was under a guy named Chuck Merriman, and it was a Japanese style, very traditional Japanese karate. And I took it because that's what they offered at the Coast Guard Academy at the time, and this was in '72. And I left the academy after we got out of Vietnam. I was not a draft dodger. I was a avoider, which is, you know, I went to the Coast Guard, so I wouldn't have to go to Vietnam. And basically, I got out of the Coast Guard after we got out of Vietnam, came home, and then people thought that I switched from karate to kung fu because kung fu is better. But at that time I did it, my brother had a kung fu school, and I could either pay for karate or take kung fu for free. So what would your choice be?
Yeah, I'd go with the free.
Right. Well, it turned out, though, that my particular style, Pai Lum Kung Fu, was head and shoulders, in my opinion, of course, you know, I'm very prejudiced towards it, much better than these other styles that I had seen in my area of Florida at the time being offered. So it wasn't just because it was my brother, but it turned out to be a great style.
You know, I've never really had the pleasure of speaking with you besides today, so I can only go off what I've read or listened to on the web. So correct me on this if I'm mistaken, okay? Now,
okay, because not everything is true on it. You'll read about it.
Definitely.
Things, but I'll correct you.
All right. Now, I've read you were pursuing your higher education when you decided to take a different path in life and give professional fighting a shot. Now, in retrospect, was that a big risk that you took, or did you just know you were going to be successful at it, if that's true?
Look, I found out how long the shot was. That just some guy can decide, I'm going to become a world champion. I'm going to become a movie star. I found out how unlikely those were after the fact. Had I known the trials and tribulations and that it would take 6 years of nonstop training, 7 days a week in Florida to become a world champion, I might not have decided to quit school. I might have gone ahead and got my engineering degree and followed my father's footsteps, where he was an engineer at the Kennedy Space Center at the time. Mm-hmm. And but you are correct. I dropped. I don't know if I dropped out. I took a few semesters off to try this thing called kickboxing, and that few semesters ended up being 28 years.
A very successful 28 years.
In retrospect, I think I could have been a successful engineer. However, I think I would have been very frustrated because I would have never known. Well, I wonder what would have happened if I had done this or that. Because the lifestyle of a professional fighter was great. It was like, I don't know. People ask me, do I like doing the acting or do I like... the fighting is so much superior fun than the acting. The acting is a job. That's a job. That's a it's not even 9 to 5. It's actually a 12-hour a day when you're working on the set. But that is a job. And I try to find the enjoyable parts of it. But really, you don't do something for 28 years like me, kickbox, unless you love it.
Absolutely. Now, during your acceptance speech at the International Sports Hall of Fame, you mentioned your first fight was on a concrete floor, man. First of all, what? A concrete floor?
Yes, it was
that
the Orlando Sports Stadium. If somebody had been knocked out, here's what happens when you get knocked out. A lot of people don't understand. You're out. You don't hit the ground and go out. You get hit, now you're out. You're unconscious. So now you're going to fall. If you're 6 feet tall, it's like your head is dropped 6 feet right to a concrete floor. Now, what happens to the skull if that happens?
Yeah, you're in some pretty deep stuff.
Right, but the martial art community was so inexperienced with fighting, they thought that's the way you do it. It's like self-defense. You don't get on a mat when somebody attacks you, right? If you're in a bar or something, somebody takes a swing at you, you just fight. You fight. And so we, being the first martial artists in '74 to try this new thing that they were calling full contact karate, we thought that was safe, fighting to the knockout on concrete. I look back now and I shiver because it was just, we survived it, but it was just the most unbelievable. It was more dangerous. Remember they started the UFC. They thought how dangerous it was because no weight division.
I've thought about that when I read this. I mean, because if somebody, like you said, hit their head on the concrete, it's you're done for.
Right. It was, I think it was about as close to, remember Van Damme had a movie called Bloodsport. It was about as close to Bloodsport as you could get because really, had we had knockouts, people would have been dead or, permanently injured. Permanently, not an injury that you recover from.
Now, so had you adopted the name The Dragon at this point in your career, or did that come later on?
It came right on that first fight. Here's what happened. I'm fighting now. I've never even been in a locker room getting ready for a professional fight. And a guy comes in wearing a tuxedo, and he says, he was a ring announcer. He goes, what's your fight name? Ring name. No, he said, what's your ring name? And I said, ring name? What do you mean? He said, Smoking Joe Frazier, Marvelous Marvin. What is your ring name you want me to announce? I said, and I'm thinking. I took about 4 seconds to think. And I thought, well, I studied Tai Lum Kung Fu, the Dragon style. I'll just call myself Don the Dragon Wilson. So that decision, which was a less than 10-second decision, has followed me my entire life. So I tell people, be careful what you say, and they follow you to the day you die.
Hey, man. Hey, man, I got to ask you, was there other names Don Wilson could have been that just didn't make the cut? I mean, I know you said it took you 4 seconds right there.
I could have called myself the Kung Fu Kid, Don the Kung Fu Kid Wilson. I mean, you could come up with there's a lot of different, nicknames out there for fighters, right? I mean, there's a bunch of them. I don't know. It just turned out it followed me in Hollywood because of this. My very first film was Blood Fist, and it was a martial art action film, of course. And they thought, well, nobody knows this guy Don Wilson. That doesn't sound very martial arts-like. If we throw in the Dragon, well, then people will, at least from the martial art community, will recognize who he is, and they'll come see this movie, support the movie. So it became, though, since there was a Don Wilson in SAG, Screen Actors Guild, I could not take that name. So it became my professional actor's name, Don the Dragon Wilson.
Man, it had to be an amazing feeling to have trained so hard and put everything on the line when you won your first world championship title in kickboxing. Yeah. Would you consider your first championship victory to be the most memorable and satisfying, or did each one bring something kind of different to the table of memories in life?
First one was the best. I just thought, because, what I didn't realize was getting the title feels so great. You feel like you accomplished everything, and now your work is done. That's not the way it works. Holding the belt is the hard part, because to get it, sometimes you fight guys, and I don't want to say anything bad about opponents. I know in the UFC they just badmouth each other today, but that's a championship wrestling thing. That's so that Dana White can create a good guy and a bad guy. It's more marketable. It's just a publicity thing. But most of those athletes are good guys, and they're just saying disrespectful things to hype the money.
Yeah.
But for me, I respected all my opponents and never had any bad feelings for them, and they were just competition, the competitors, and right afterwards I could go out and have dinner with them. I mean, there was no animosity. And so for me, the very first one is the most memorable, and, well, I'd like to say I could remember everything that night, but of course, a friend, when I got out of the ring, he met me there with a shot of wild turkey. I think it was a triple shot. He goes, "Here, Don, let's drink to your success." And I was dehydrated. I took one drink of that wild turkey, and you know what? I'm lucky I didn't lose my belt that night because I was carrying it around everywhere.
I bet.
Like win the Oscar, I think. You know how they show that these people, they win the Oscar and they're carrying it to the after party, to the dinners, to have coffee, to have drink. They just carry that Oscar around. Well, I was kind of that way with the belt.
Well, of course you would be. I would be too. You know, that's an amazing accomplishment in life. You know, and I think it was really cool how you were able to transition from the ring to the silver screen. Was this something you had planned on doing, or was the idea of using your talents in movies presented to you by someone else?
It was presented to me by Chuck Norris. Now, other people, because Bruce Lee was called the Little Dragon, and you know he was not 100% Chinese. His mother was white. I believe she was half white. But anyway, Bruce was a mixed race person. But a lot of people thought, hey, you know, the Little Dragon, he's called the Dragon, and they just thought that. But nobody from the film industry, I mean, I lived in Florida. You can't get much further from L.A. than Florida, right? And being in America. So the only person that would come to my fights that was in the business was Chuck Norris. He came from the fight game like me. We instantly bonded. At the first time I fought, he invited me to his hotel room, and we became friends. And he suggested it to me. He said, Don, I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but you know what? It's turned out to be a second career that's been very enjoyable for me to be in the movie industry, martial art action films. And he said, you should try it at least when you retire. And that's what I did. In 85, the first retirement, because I've retired 3 times now. At the first retirement, I took the money that I had, which wasn't much, got in my red Corvette, stacked it full of as much stuff as I could carry, which you know how big a Corvette is.
You ain't carrying much, that's for sure.
And I drove out to L.A. to be an actor. And that was in 1985.
Now, even though you were used to fighting in front of thousands of people, did it take a little getting used to being in front of a camera as an actor?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, a lot of people think, well, you know, you perform live in front of these people, so, you know, there's no nervousness when they turn that red light on, the camera comes on, they go, action. The truth is this, though. As a professional athlete, it is one of your most valued possessions is to not show and control emotions. Hold emotions in. Not only can you not show emotions, you don't show pain. If a guy kicks me in the leg or hits me in the body and I'm in pain and I show it, what's going to happen is he's going to go right to that same spot, correct? Mm-hmm. I mean, you understand, if a guy thinks he hurts you, he's going to hit the same spot. So as an athlete, you cover and hide and control and restrict emotions. As an actor, you have to do just the opposite. You have to show everything. You have to reveal your emotions. I mean, it's not interesting to watch somebody just spouting out memorized dialogue. It's interesting to see somebody experience something emotionally in front of the camera. You know, to watch relationships develop and situations, you know, pan out on film is interesting to people. So it was the opposite. Yes, I was used to performing live in front of thousands of people as an athlete, but not by showing emotion, by controlling emotion. So the hardest thing I would say in the beginning was to break down that barrier where I was trying to hold everything in and start to reveal things. But I took acting lessons. I mean, you know, they do train you, and I had private. Since I was starring in the movies, I had private instructors, and I got some of the best ones in Hollywood. So I think I improved as quickly as I needed to.
Now, how many movies have you done so far?
Well, I started in 30. So, but I've appeared in, you know, I'll appear in movies if friends call and then, you know, it doesn't. I tell them, I said, as long as it's in LA, just send a limo, pick me up, drive me over there. I'll do my dialogue. I'll come back. I'll be done. And I do that for friends. If I meet somebody, whether it's a director or a producer or another actor or whatever, I do that now. They call them cameos. And really, the reality is, even though I don't do them specifically, I don't expect I'm going to have a career of cameos and retire. I get paid more now to do one scene in a movie than I used to work for 2 months on a movie.
Wow, cha-ching.
So, well, it's you know what you always, it's a struggle out here. I don't want to say it's easy. Even after 30 years in the business, but the struggle changes. At one point, it's a struggle just to get cast in a film, any part. Now it's a struggle in finding the best projects and getting them, rather than it going to Van Damme or, you know, in other words, there's only a certain number of us, you know, that do these independent martial art action films. So, you know, it's not about auditioning, though. It's about picking the right ones. If you turn down one, look, my best friend was Chris Penn. and Sean Penn's younger brother. He gets the script one day, and he's not been working. Me and Charlie Sheen have been loaning him money just to support his lifestyle. And he gets the script, and he goes, Don, he says, I haven't worked in like a year. He goes, Harvey Keitel says, if I do this movie, I'm not going to make any money. It's a low-budget movie, first-time director. He said, but it's a good role, and I'll be able to show these people in film festivals that I know how to act. He said, I was a leading man coming up, got fat, and people quit hiring me. So he said, I can show people I can act. So he takes the movie, it wins Sundance, and that was Reservoir Dogs. From that moment on, Chris was working again. And so that's the way this business can be. It's a roller coaster ride. You can be at your rock bottom. And John Travolta, as a matter of fact, did Pulp Fiction. He was paid less money than I was being paid at the time for movies. His career was down in the dumps back then. But what happened was Pulp Fiction, that character, that role, boom, he becomes Mr. $20 million man again. So if that's not a roller coaster ride, I believe he was paid like $100,000 or something like that for the movie, but he was very low. Nobody took Pulp Fiction for the money. They did it because, Tarantino had won Sundance. They loved the script. They loved the characters. They just wanted to make a good movie. But you see what happened to John Travolta's career right after Pulp Fiction.
Let's talk about your latest movie real quick, Martial Arts Kid. It's still playing in theaters right now, right?
It's in theaters, and here's the thing about it. It was a idea, my brother's idea. He decided to produce his first film, and he wanted to do something similar to The Karate Kid, which, the last Karate Kid, which was with Jackie Chan, that grossed $200 million domestic. And my brother said, well, you know what? If we make this movie for $500,000, if we make 1% of that, $2 million in the theaters, that'll be worth it. So he got investors, and they put money in, and they told him to shoot the movie in L.A. because it's low budget. You can't go to locations. He wanted to shoot it in Cocoa Beach. But he calls me up, and he says, Don, I heard of this thing called Kickstarter, and maybe we can get some money for that, and I can fly the cast and crew for 1 week to Florida and shoot the exteriors. And I said, James, nobody gets money out of Kickstarter. I don't know anybody. Nobody's going to give us money. But anyway, he gets on my Facebook page, and within 1 month, he raises $171,000. And he wanted $150. He thought $150 would cover it, but he got $171 in 1 month. People just gave the money. So I got to thank, on the show, thank you to all the Kickstarters, because we were able then to shoot it kind of like the studios would. They would fly to Cocoa Beach and shoot it really in Cocoa Beach, right? Mm-hmm. And then they'd shoot interiors here in L.A. because we came back and shot the rest of the movie in Los Angeles. But the audience will not know that. The audience assumes everything was shot, the entire movie shot on location at Cocoa Beach, Florida. So anyway, that's the movie that's in the theaters now. And the largest family rating organization is called the Dove Foundation. Now, the Dove Foundation ranked it in the top 6 movies in its category, which is action family film, and of the year in 2015. It's in the top 6 of all movies. Now, its competition, Ant-Man.
I think you got Pixels, Avengers, Age of Ultron. Right. Yeah, man, it's right up there.
Those movies. I mean, Rob, those movies are $100 million and above budget. And we are in, now of course we didn't win. In our case, like the Oscars, when a guy gets an Oscar, he says, well, it's just an honor to be nominated. But let me tell you something, they all want to walk away with that gold.
Of course, man, of course. But you're in some pretty good company there.
Yeah, in our case, we have won by being nominated. Of course, we're not going to, how can we get Best Picture over, well, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying, there are some that break through, but they're usually, this one is kind of socially responsible because this one is anti-bullying. But a movie like Dallas Buyers Club, that's a low-budget movie. That was I think it's like a 28-day shoot. A very low-budget movie, but it was Oscar quality. And so you can create, a success with ultra-low-budget movies like that. Well, another one would be Leaving Las Vegas. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Very low budget. I mean, I do movies bigger budget than those. But, of course, mine aren't nominated for Oscars. But still, I'm saying you can do, and it proves we did that. We did not have the money, but I believe the basic story of a down-and-out kid who uses through the martial arts and his relationship with the teacher, he uses that to raise up above and become successful. That basic story resonates with audiences today, and that's why it was I think, chosen because the performances. I really think that Jansen and the girl, Catherine Newton. Well, she was the star of Paranormal 4. I've never seen the film, but I understand it's a big studio film. It was $130 million in box office.
Mm-hmm.
So she is definitely one of the semi-A list, B plus list young actresses. She was 17 when we shot the film.
An up-and-comer.
She was a high school girl, but yeah, she was perfect. Those are the leads, and I'm supporting cast, and Cynthia Rothrock supporting cast.
So other than the Martial Arts Kid, do you have any other projects you're working on or upcoming seminars you're participating in?
Oh, yeah. Well, as far as movies, though, I've got a movie that was actually shot in 2012 in Bangkok. It just came out this year. It's called White Tiger. And the reason for that is, and this has happened in Hollywood, I mean, people are surprised that this is my first experience with this. The producers in Thailand got into a lawsuit with the producers in America. And that lawsuit stopped the release of the movie for 4 years. or 3.5. So for 3.5 years, they fought, and finally the American producers got the rights, and it's being released now. It's called White Tiger. And it's with me, and Cynthia Rothrock is I would say, my adversary in this, and the bad person in this, bad bodyguard in this. So I have a big fight scene with her at the end of the movie. But they're a very famous martial artist named Joe Louis. You know, there was the Joe Louis boxer, but there was also a Joe Louis martial artist. And Joe Louis was in it, and he's what I call the heart of the movie. And it's all about getting revenge for his death. And the lead actor is Matt Mullins, and I'm kind of like my brother says I play the Tommy Lee Jones character, you know, the Tommy Lee in Men in Black.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the older, gruff kind of, I'm a local, it was shot in Bangkok, by the way, the whole movie was shot in Thailand. I'm a local Thai retired military officer that helps this young American FBI agent get the guy that killed his partner, which was this martial artist Joe Louis. So that was I believe that was gonna be very popular with martial artists when it's available. It's now being sold, but I don't know how familiar you are, but, you know, we sell the movies to distributors, producers do. Then they distribute them whenever they decide it's time. They put them in the theaters, they just release the DVD. So it's really out of the hands of the producers what the distributors do. You know, it's been sold foreign now. I know in Europe I know it's been sold in the Middle East. And it will be, some of these movies like The Martial Art Kid will be theatrical in some of these countries. So, you know, those two are coming out, White Tiger, The Martial Art Kid. And I have another movie that I did last year in the Philippines called Showdown in Manila. And that's kind of like, they wanted to go like the Expendables and get a bunch of action stars. So I basically, me, Olivia Gruner, Cynthia Rothrock, we come in at the last action scene. It's got Casper Van Dien in it. Alexander Nevsky's a Russian action star. He's the star of it. Mark Dacascos. I don't know if you know him, but he's a very popular martial art actor. Tia Carrere. I hope I don't forget anyway because actors hate it. Matthias Hughes. I'm going down the line. You know. But anyway, it's one of those independent films, action films, that it's having that Expendables kind of more than one star in it. And although it's not my movie, but, you know, I'm only in the last final action scene.
It's one of them cameos that you're making that money on.
Cameos, yes. And like I said, you know, I included it. Look, I do the opening action sequence of Scorpion King. I didn't know if you knew that, but last year Universal Studios contacted me. They wanted to have a big martial art action scene, the opening of Scorpion King 4. So I fly to Romania. This is where, you know, at the time I agreed. I didn't really know some of the logistics involved, but they shoot it in Romania. So I go to Romania. I rehearse for 4 days. Now, in my fight scenes in my movies, we might rehearse for 45 minutes, and then we start shooting. This is 4 days, 12-hour days, rehearsing this big sword fighting. And now I'm not telling the story as a derogatory thing to the star of the movie. It used to be The Rock, but now it's a different actor. His name's Victor Webster. Really great guy, by the way. Great guy. But Victor and I, the very first take, we're in front of this big castle. There's a camel in the scene, a bunch of other actors. The very first take, there's an accident. His sword goes all the way through my calf and sticks into my shin bone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I finished the take, though, because I'm trained by Roger Corman. I don't cut. And I finished it, and I'm on the ground. I look, and there's a puddle of blood there. And they put me in an ambulance, take me to Romanian emergency room, and sew me back up. And I came back and finished the night of shooting. But the thing of it is, there's no action. So they flew me there, and I was there for, it was like the last week of the shoot. So the way it was scheduled, they couldn't add it. They tried to add other scenes, but they didn't make sense. And it was kind of a fiasco. The very first take. I mean, the fight was basically not. There's no fight. My stunt double came in, and if you would have used him the whole time, it would have just been the back of somebody's head anyway. So they just eliminated it.
Now, did you keep the sword?
What's up? Yeah.
Did you keep that sword?
No, I don't. I want to forget it.
Well, man, everyone knows who's been on my show, I like to keep my interviews short and not take up too much time out of my guest day. So man, where can people go to get more info on the Dragon as far as social media or any other online presence?
Well, I am on. I do not manage the Twitter and because I'm not that social media literate, but there's a Twitter account and there's one of those Instagrams, but I don't do those. My brother's assistant kind of handles those, so I don't really know what's on. Mm-hmm. But I have a Facebook page, and it's a personal Facebook page, and I did not know that there was a limit. So when I first opened it years ago, it says Don Wilson. It doesn't say Don the Dragon, because I was not doing it as a business. I was just doing it.
Just for you and your personal friends, I guess.
Correct. And within weeks, I had 5,000 people. I said, well, that's it. That's all your friends. And so I keep getting these requests, and it's like embarrassing because these are actual people that I know, some of them.
And they can't become friends with you.
But I felt it was impolite to go to somebody you don't know and just go delete. I just couldn't get myself to do it. But what I found out was if I keep the Facebook page, which is my name, Don Wilson, open, it's the same for followers. And I've got probably, 15,000 followers now. So there's like 20,000 people on the Facebook page. But it's not a fan page. It is. I put my personal pictures. I put fun pictures. It's entertaining for me, and I do love interacting with my fans because it's never been possible before. It is a socially acceptable way to respond to somebody who says, well, I didn't like this part of the movie. And then I can respond and say, well, I didn't write the script. When you get hired to do a movie, you are not responsible for every aspect of that movie, the music choice, the casting choices, and a lot of inexperienced people who don't know the entertainment industry, they feel like if your name is above the title, well, you did everything. I'd like to say that I'm a control of everything in my movies, but that is far from the truth. I many times am what they call actor for hire, and you do the dialogue and you listen to the director. And you do the movie as instructed. That's basically what your job is.
Yeah, and you cash the check.
Well, that's not a bad thing.
That's definitely not a bad thing.
I hope no producers hear this, but everybody in Hollywood is overpaid. And that just doesn't go for me. I'm saying, and the people that
now, when we get off here, if you want me to edit that out, I will.
Yeah, we're all overpaid for what we do. Now, look, to give you an example, I don't remember who was president, but at one time Jim Carrey made $20 million a film for talking out of his rear end, right, of Jim Carrey. The president makes about $400,000. So is there a little inequity there? I mean, we got Jim Carrey making $20 million, and the president of the United States making $400,000. For what we're doing, we're creating 90 minutes of entertainment. That is, if you're lucky, if you can do a good job, that's what you'll create.
Now, sometimes you take a sword through the calf, though.
Well, hey, I do action films and things happen, man. I mean, I've had several close calls, and it's just the nature of the business. I mean, what we all do. When you get in your car, look, there's 20,000 highway deaths in America every year. We don't lose 20,000 action stars a year. So, what's more dangerous, getting in your car or me doing these movies? I mean,
I guess it depends on which movie you're doing.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely true. I've done some in areas like I was in India, and they put me on a ledge, but they could not attach me to the building. I was about 200 feet up. They couldn't attach me to it because it was an actual relic. It was actual like a museum. It was a building. They were a historic building. So they said, Don, can we just put you on the ledge and you just stand there? And I go, yeah, but get the shot quick. So they put me up there. They have a crane. A crane lifts you, goes all the way 150 feet up in the air. And the director's on a megaphone. He goes, Step off the crane, Mr. Wilson. I step off. So then they turn the cameras on, and look, I'm not attached. I look down, and it's straight. It looked like 1,000 feet to me. And he goes, Don, you must move. You look like a statue. I'm supposed to be climbing into the building. The movie is called Operation Cobra. But anyway, so I'm in India, up on this building. If I was to fall, if I was lucky enough to survive, I would go to some Indian hospital where I've never been to one, but I can imagine it's not like Cedars-Sinai. So I've done some dangerous things in my time on these location shoots. We're not the 100 million and above budget, so independent films, it's a little bit more risky than Tom Cruise.
Well, I bet at that moment you was probably thinking, I'm not getting paid enough for this.
Well, you know what? It's not the pay. You know what? It's like a pride of your work. It's not really the money. I don't say, well, if they'd pay me another $100,000, I would have risked my life on this movie. No. You know what?
I got you.
I just want to do the best job I can. And, that's a life lesson. I did that since I was a kid. I mean, if you're going to play basketball, don't you want to play the best game you can? I mean, sports kind of taught me kind of a life lesson that I took into and I believe Chuck Norris did that, and Schwarzenegger. Me and Chuck Norris and Schwarzenegger did an ESPN show together once. So we're all three sitting there. At that time, Arnold was the number one actor in the world. He had done Terminator 2, got paid, I believe it was $15 million, which was the top. Chuck Norris had Walker Texas Ranger just started and was the number one action show. And I was in Time Magazine. They had an article in Time Magazine that said I was one of the top 4 direct-to-video stars. Now, we had all excelled in our areas of expertise, but yet all three of us were given no chance in Hollywood. None. Arnold couldn't even speak English. Chuck, they didn't think was a thespian, and no American martial art action. He's the first American martial art action star, if you think about it, Chuck Norris, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't any. And I was a 6-foot-tall Asian with a Southern accent trying to make it. And we all took, I believe, the life lessons that we learned to excel in our sports and our martial arts, me and Chuck anyway, and we adapted that to the entertainment industry, and it actually led to success. And so, I think that's the people that were like my mentors before, because I broke down a lot of doors. Even though Jackie Chan, Jet Li did movies here, they're not Americans without accent, right? Mm-hmm. They're from Hong Kong. They're from China. I'm the only Asian American starring in 30 films. I can't think of another one. To tell you the truth, that is an American that has no accent, because I've been asked many times to do the accent, and I just don't do it.
Well, Don, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. I can't thank you enough, and I'm interested in knowing or seeing when White Tiger comes out how the fans react, because they'll be like, man, the older Don gets, the younger he looks.
Well, right. It was shot in 2012. Yeah. Well, you know what? I didn't even think about that part of it. Being an actor, I probably should have said, "Hey, that's good for me, man. That's much younger."
Well, thanks for taking time out, buddy. Man, I'm very pumped for you to be a guest on my show, and it was a real privilege for me.
I had fun, and thank you, Rob.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.